It is no secret that those who attain power may often abuse it to further their personal agendas. The means of doing so, however, can take many forms. As written, the prophecy would become all too real. A certain Starsector modder would commit the ultimate sin, adding what many had feared for years: malware. Thus, the biggest meltdown the Starsector community had ever seen was born. I'm IroncladLion, and this is the dark side of Starsector modding. Starsector is a brilliant game that has been in development for well over 14 years, with the first development blog post dating back to November 2010. Yes, the onslaught is eternal. Gameplay-wise, Starsector is mechanically similar to games like Mount and Blade. There's a vast open world, or in this case galaxy, that the player can freely roam. They build up their army, or fleet, and may then conquer the galaxy or otherwise do as they please. The idea of a power fantasy, starting out weak and then building yourself up to become an unstoppable force, is an extremely common trope in video games. In fact, I'd say most games base their progression off this idea. Development-wise, however, Starsector is extremely similar to a game like RimWorld, a tiny development team consisting of only a few people at most. Also similar to RimWorld is that Starsector has been designed with mod support from its very inception, and for many years the Starsector modding community has built an impressive array of mods, many of which, despite their age, are still maintained to this day. One such mod is Diablo Avionics, which is largely considered the sacred elder mod of the community. However, despite its legendary reputation, not even the cool red faction with mechs and transforming ships was spared from the chaos of 2024. All because certain members of the Starsector community took their personal power fantasies and tried to make them reality. It's why we now have FAQ sections on mods that need to explicitly state there is no malware or malicious code within. But how did we reach such a state? Before we find salvation, we must first understand the sins of our past. It's well known that Starsector has seen a fair bit of modding drama over the years. However, due to the petty nature of it all, it's better enjoyed with a large tub of popcorn. This time, however, deprived of my buttery snack, I found myself not as a spectator, but as a gladiator of the arena, finding myself as one of the major combatants in the 2024 Starsector Thunderdome. Will this video be a little biased? No. This video will be extremely biased. Members of the community will be named in this video, and despite the differences in opinion I may have with some of them, I ask that everyone behaves in a civil manner, so we may avoid the horrific events that have transpired from ever happening again. For it is through storytelling that we may pass on our lessons learned to the next generation. So, allow me to tell you the story of 2024. It all started with a joke, and as with all jokes, understanding the context is essential. It was in my mod review for Ironshell that I made a dark humor joke about Yami, a planet sharing a name with one of my favorite Black Clover characters. Yami is actually a vanilla planet in the Naraka system, and with the Ironshell mod becomes one of the two faction planets. Now, in contrast to the luxurious Ironshell capital water resort world of Chittagupta, Yami is the planet of capital punishment, housing an underground penal colony on a rather inhospitable cryovolcanic planet. Now for clarity, I'll read a piece of the planet's lore. On occasion, the prison wardens are rumored to hold auctions, selling prisoners to the highest bidder for nebulous purposes. What is known is that, even accounting for the death toll expected in such a place, prisoners have gone missing with alarming regularity. So this is a very dark planet with a lot of really bad things happening. In fact, I think it's the darkest planet lore I've encountered, and yet I have a lot of respect for the mod authors for including such a planet, as the sci-fi environment of Starsector is fitting for these darker and more mature subjects. Considering we have illegal drug smuggling to supply mining colonies, illegal organ harvesting and trafficking, supplying weapons and munitions to terrorists for profit, and even genociding an entire planet's population through saturation bombardment from orbit as playable content? Yeah, this planet lore does not faze me. And just like Henry Cavill, I am dedicated to the source material of my work. Speaking of source material, this entire video would be a little silly without it. So, here's the original footage of the Yami Planet section. Varga is heaven. Yami, by contrast, is an unforgiving planet hosting an underground penal colony. Emphasis on the underground. Prison wardens allegedly hold auctions, raising funds for the prison by selling baked goods. Where the fuck do you think we are? They auction off the prisoners. It's unknown what becomes of these prisoners, but there are rumors of head patting and hand holding. While I can't reveal how to find these alleged auctions, there are others you may wish to see on Yami. When it comes to those... Now, was there anything explicit in this joke? Nope. Now, if you really stretched it, you could argue what's shown is rated T for teen, and that's being pretty generous. You also might have noticed a little timer I added. That, too, will be important later, as this section was but a very tiny piece of what has otherwise been my largest project so far. Getting back to our timeline, I'd post the Iron Show review on February 23rd, 2024. However, even after the community had witnessed years of petty drama in Starsector modding, nobody was prepared for what came next. I released the Iron Shell review. Reception is positive, and people like the video, statistically falling right in line with my other Starsector mod reviews. However, despite the incredibly positive reception from the greater Starsector community, there was a small group that really didn't appreciate the video. And to fully understand this section, let me introduce the various Starsector communities that are relevant to these events. First, we have the Fractal Softworks website and the official Starsector forum. This is where the glorious mod index is located. It's the best place to acquire up-to-date Starsector mods, discuss them, and provide feedback directly to both the game and mod developers. Second, we have the Starsector Reddit. I shouldn't need to do too much explaining here. It's Reddit. People post Starsector related news, questions, dumb memes, and ship girls. Ho, the ship girls. We'll talk more about those in a bit. And third, we have the USC. So, what is the USC? What does it stand for? It stands for the unofficial Starsector community, which is a Discord. What could possibly go wrong? It's unofficial as the developers of Starsector are not involved in any way. It's a public Discord that anyone may join, but is privately moderated by various members of the Starsector community. You might be able to tell where this is going. So after going through the surprisingly tedious process of getting the content creator role within the Discord, I'd publicly post my mod reviews, including the just released Iron Shell review, on Saturday, February 24th. Within 3 hours I would be muted and prevented from posting. The next day, all of my videos taken down, then fully banned from the USC on Monday, February 26th, all prior to receiving any contact about why I was banned. At the time, I actually thought it had to do with a small joke about the USC I put into my review. That clip is as follows. There is, however, a silver lining. Much like how unofficial Starsector Discord moderators are not immune to ship girls, hegemony patrols are not immune to your plot armor. This is in reference to one of the highest rated Starsector Reddit posts, in which a user was warned on the USC for posting, and I quote directly, "the sexualization of a ship in anime style." No, I'm not joking. I believe the specific reasoning was that the thighs were too thick. Now, I'm of the opinion that said ship girl should be allowed to carry on her civic duties of saving lives, and it seems the rest of the community thinks so as well. We'll dive deeper into the history of the USC later, and why they often respond to trivial concerns with wildly disproportionate actions. In the meantime, we'll advance the timeline. The day after my ban went into effect, Tuesday, February 27th, the ban would be posted publicly on the USC. And here we go.
What?
When I first saw this, I was like, are they for real right now? No, they can't be serious. Nobody's that delusional. But then I remember it's the USC, and I'm like, oh god, they really are serious, aren't they? Given the extreme word choice for head patting and hand holding, I don't know what the conversation about my ban looked like, but I imagine it sounded something like this.
So, is everything ready for tonight?
Oh yeah, I thought we'd start off with seething about anime and then see how we feel after that.
Not the anime, you know.
Oh right, the ban for Ironclad, the ban chosen specially to kill Ironclad, Ironclad's ban. That ban?
Yes, that ban.
Got you covered.
Excellent.
The brilliant minds of the USC Shadow Council convened and decided on this ban after days of deliberation, which is funny because this never happened. I can't believe I have to explain this, but if someone makes a joke about contraband in Starsector, for example, it does not mean that they are promoting drug usage. If someone makes a joke about saturation bombardment because they don't want to pay taxes, they are not promoting real genocide. And that's the crazy part about this, is it's so disconnected from reality. Like, here's reality. Okay? That's our base. Then one level away from reality, we have a YouTube video. Then we have a joke in this YouTube video. This should already be enough for most people to know that it's not real. But let's keep going. I love my dogs. But let's keep going. This joke is about a video game. In fact, it's about a fictional planet in a video game. Sorry, it's a joke about a fictional planet in a mod for a video game. We are here. Given the tier of logic we are working with, if I made a joke about why the chicken crossed the road, the USC would probably be confused as to why a chicken is on the road to begin with. Clearly, roads are dangerous, and the chicken could get run over. Therefore, the only logical conclusion would be to ban me for promoting the vehicular slaughter of farm animals. Don't worry though, the metaphorical chicken did safely cross the road, and this greatly upset the chicken haters. And because I respect women, I'd tell her, hey, nice cock. Speaking of poultry, my wife and I enjoy our fair share of dark humor. Just the other day, she had prepared for herself a bowl of chicken and eggs. Do you know what she called this scrumptious dish?
The women and children first.
And just as quickly as my wife devoured her delicious meal, word spread about the ban. For it's not every day that a YouTuber gets banned, and naturally, people started asking questions, especially when the ban's wording is probably the most nuclear in the history of the USC. Every single one of my videos had been removed off the USC, which led to even more confusion, leading to more people asking questions, and thus greatly amplifying the situation. This would be the beginning of what many people have now referred to as the Streisand effect. And the crackdown was hard. People were so afraid to talk about these events that they had to resort to direct messages to avoid the moderator's wrath. Because despite the USC's best efforts to control and silence the community, it would only make people more curious. Also, something I guess they didn't think about is that people could just go watch the source material and see the truth. Many of these voices, however, would quickly be silenced as a huge amount of posts would be deleted over the next several days. What I'm able to show is the very few that remain, including these nuggets of gold. We'll pocket those for later. And just like so many people have been asking for months now, is why? To try and answer that question and provide some insight, let's take a deeper look at the lore of the USC. The USC is a fascinating place, especially the moderation, because on one hand they are unofficial and are not bound by the developers, which ultimately lets them do whatever they want, whether it be forcing their opinions onto others or exiling members they don't like. On the other hand, they also boast that the Discord is pinned to the official forum in an effort to justify whatever decision they come up with and establish credibility. Through their connections, they have also managed to get the Discord linked to the Starsector Reddit page. Take note that they are the only Discord that has these privileges, and they like to keep it that way. Constantly trying to establish control over the Starsector community without actually being bound by any official rules. You can see the obvious issue this creates and why people throw around the nickname the Mod Mafia. Of course, that nickname goes many years back, which I don't have time to fully explain, so we'll get right to more modern events. Anime. Anime is different, therefore anime bad. Any modification to Starsector that does not adhere to their highly subjective standards upsets the Mod Mafia, whether this is faction lore, game balance, art style, anything really. Anime and related art styles especially receive a unique kind of hate. The USC actually implemented a bot in their Discord that is programmed to say anime is bad, but furries are okay.
Brother, get the flamer, the heavy flamer.
Now if we take a look at my channel and my mod reviews, well, you can see where this is going. Tensions have risen the past 2 years since I started making these reviews, as several anime-inspired mods have risen in popularity, much to the dismay of the Mod Mafia. Would actually see the first mental break happen, surprisingly, right after my top 50 Starsector mods video in 2023. While most of the community was extremely happy to see so many mods covered in one video compared to my singular in-depth reviews, there was one modder who really wasn't happy. I'm of course referring to the infamous Harmful Mechanic. Despite one of their 3 mods actually being featured in the video, Player Flags Pack, which adds 24 flags. They're not too complicated and not too basic, right in that sweet spot. Their faction mods unfortunately didn't make the cut, which may have contributed to their subsequent actions. Harmful Mechanic would then go on to code both of their factions to be permanently hostile towards the UAF, a faction mod that had recently gained popularity and made it into the top 50. And when I say permanent hostility, I mean that Starsector faction relations range from -100 to +100, with 0 being true neutrality. True neutrality. True neutrality. True neutrality. Dassault Mikoyan Engineering and Magellan Protectorate were both hard-coded at -90 relations with UAF, and prevented players from raising those relations through gameplay. This would then be noticed by a new user of both mods and asked about on the official forum. This new user was not being rude in any way, but simply asking why the relations were coded that way, and if they could at least be unlocked to allow the player to change them through natural gameplay. Harmful Mechanic would not only refuse this request, but start calling this new user entitled, and as any reasonable mod author does, pulls the download links to all of their mods off the forum. Harmful Mechanic would continue to escalate this conversation, relating the situation to a prisoner's dilemma. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but feel free to pause and see the whole post. Now, unfortunately, I didn't save the last posts, but Harmful Mechanic would then type out a novel of a rant and post a link to this page, implying the new user was suffering from learned helplessness. It got so ridiculous that eventually the devs would step in and officially uninvite Harmful Mechanic from the forums. Now, this is probably the most obvious case in regards to the hate against anime mods, but the weird obsession with modders taking action against other mods they don't like is a widespread issue, especially when it comes to older modders with established expectations trying to bully newer modders with fresh ideas. But on the more positive side, I'd like to highlight how this was dealt with. Being on the official forum, the issue was contained and with a reasonable response. That topic was a very petty one, but it makes you wonder, what would the response be if the issue was more serious? We actually have a great example of that as well, and that's terraforming and station construction. In 2022, modmaker Boggled included an IP logger in their mod, which collected pieces of player data, including IP address, geolocation information, mod version, settings configuration, and the rest of the mods the player was using. While there clearly was no intention of doing harm, it brought up the very important discussion of data collection and what's acceptable. The mod page did in fact state that it was collecting this data, but if I know anything about mod communities, is that nobody reads the entire mod page when installing new mods. They check to see if it's safe compatible and then smash that download button. So Alex, the lead developer of Starsector, would then come to address this issue himself, as the mod used opt-out data collection instead of opt-in. And in a very reasonable yet assertive way, Alex established that he was not comfortable with such a thing. For those of you that don't know, when the blue text gets pulled out, they're not fucking around. I like to imagine Alex is using the voice from Dune when he writes in blue. Feels more thematic that way. Boggled would then promptly stop the data collection, as he stated opt-in would be too biased anyways. The scarier part of this comes from Boggled stating,
I was collecting data for about 6 months before anyone commented on it, despite the notice being on the original post the entire time, and TASC being open source. If I was doing something malicious and didn't draw any attention to it, I'm not sure when it would have been discovered.
Absolutely terrifying, or at least it would be, if it was never addressed. I think the biggest highlight here is that a good conversation was had, no bans were needed, everyone learned a few things, and it established there is no malicious intent in what they were doing. I wish I could say the same for some of the other commenters in this section. Now, I haven't tried terraforming and station construction myself. It does look like a cool mod, and I'd love to know what people think about it. This is on the forum, so anyone can read the full conversation if they wish, which is another great thing about the official forum, is the level of transparency. Now, where were we? Ah yes, ridiculous bans, barred discussion, and deleted posts. Because nothing bad ever happens in the USC. Or as Hawkfire would write, there are no mods in Bossing Say. Since we're talking about lore, did you know that some of the Iron Shell characters actually participate in the dubious events of Yami? Charlotte Hex certainly does. And who might inform you about this tidbit of lore? Her supervisor, Ava Nisha. Does that name sound familiar? Keep that in mind for later. Now, the rest of this section about Yami, as dark as it is totally fine, because it's lore accurate to Iron Shell. The 2.6 seconds, however, is not from Iron Shell, which was enough to get me an instant permanent ban. Selling prisoners off to do do who knows what with is morally acceptable, but head pats and hand-holding is just too far. The most interesting part about this though is I didn't break any of the USC rules, but now that we've established a bit more of the lore, we know they wouldn't miss an opportunity to try and take down my channel. I was, and still am, disappointed that the USC committed to this zealous accusation, and I'd be forced to respond. Because by creating this controversy, it shifted focus away from the positive nature of the video and the awesome mod I was highlighting, Iron Shell, which is really a damn shame and not fair to the mod authors. And this is exactly where my YouTube community post comes in. In this post, I do my best to explain the situation in the most positive format I could, which let me tell you was quite the challenge given the situation. I'd additionally detail my plan to re-upload the Iron Shell review with the 2.6 seconds of footage swapped out, the codename for the re-upload being the Wholesome Edition, which I hope people saw the humor in, seeing as how Starsector is a wholesome game where nothing bad ever happens. My intention being to shift focus back towards the positive aspects of the video. I do think this was the right call, especially in the long term, so the Iron Shell review could be free from the senseless drama. And so, reaching a moment of respite, we knelt down. We rubbed the sands of the arena between our fingers. Feeling each and every grain, we reminded ourselves what it is we were fighting for. The health of the player base, the love of modding, and the prosperity of the sector. But little did I, and the rest of the Starsector community know, things had merely just begun. Welcome to the main event, and allow me to officially introduce the former Starsector modder, President Matt Damon. I don't know why that's his username, I'm just as confused as you are. He was author of the Exotica Technologies mod, Combat Activators, and more notably, Take No Prisoners. Many of you are probably familiar with this mod as it actually made it into the top 50 Starsector mods video. Take No Prisoners, the most recent mod to be released in this list. TNP is all about taking prisoners and treating them nicely. If you defeat a fleet in battle, you'll have the option to talk, execute, or release said prisoner. What's more interesting though is that Take No Prisoners is actually based off a different mod by the name Capture Officers and Crew, which President Matt Damon believes he created a superior version of, as stated on his mod page. Ironically, shortly after TNP was posted, a not safe for work fork was made of Take No Prisoners, as at the time it was open source. This fork is based off TNP with morally dubious actions available. My advice? Don't go looking for it, and if you do, be prepared for what you will find. Needless to say, if you go looking for disturbing things on the internet, you will find disturbing things on the internet. If you take a walk in the suicide forest, you might just find some bodies. Speaking of bodies, President Matt Damon would rack up quite the body count before making like a tree himself. But before we get there, let's take it from the top down. And speaking of takedowns, President Matt Damon, again as any reasonable mod author does, would remove Take No Prisoners from the forum. He would do this on February 26th, with the reasoning development discontinued because of other really gross people. Besides the fact that taking your mods down out of anger is never a good idea, all this would do is bring more attention to the subject. Try an effect go because surprisingly, it makes people ask why. And so once people found out why and told PMD that wasn't a good idea, 3 days later on February 29th, it announced Take No Prisoners 2. Now on the surface this seemed like a good thing, as it gave off the impression PMD was going to rewrite Take No Prisoners and make a new and improved version. But I think intentions are very important, and upon closer inspection of the mod page, the true intentions behind the mod could be seen. This mod wasn't about taking prisoners at all. It was about meeting your new best friends. Take No Prisoners Friendship is Magic Edition. But more importantly, under the FAQ section, it'd state one of the main reasons behind the mod is so PMD could hold one over the other guys. Luckily, the forum is where mostly sane people talk about Starsector, and the very first response would give some very good advice, telling PMD that this wasn't a good idea and wasn't healthy. This was February 29th, and while the exact date is unknown, this is when malicious intent would become malicious code. The funny code, the spicy code, the corrupting code,
The Malware.
The first report on the official forum would be seen on March 3rd. Surprisingly, however, this would be on the page for Seeker Unidentified Contact, in which a user would report a bricked save. Seeker is not one of PMD's mods. It's a mod by Tartiflet, one of the oldest modders for Starsector, who's made several great mods over the years. What many people were unaware of at the time is that Tartiflet had stepped away from Starsector modding and had passed several of his mods on to President Matt Damon, who at the time was a relatively new modder seeking to make a name for himself. This process of passing on maintenance or custodianship of mods is an honored tradition within the Starsector community. The best example of this honorable tradition is Tartiflet himself and the beloved mod, Diablo Avionics. Many people have thought that Tartiflet is in fact the creator of the Diablo Avionics mod, which is an understandable attribution. The truth is, he's actually been the custodian of the mod since November 2015, close to 9 years, with the original creator, Flash Frozen, having published the mod all the way back in August 2014. The amazing work done by Tartiflet and other members of the community have now continued this mod's legacy for over 10 years, making it the longest maintained faction mod in Starsector's history. And so on March 4th, 2024, when bricked saves were reported on both the Psy Nation and Diablo Avionics mod page, the dots started to connect. Wanting to make a connection of his own, PMD would respond to the Diablo Avionics report on March 4th, stating, "I need your whole log, boy." But you see, PMD didn't want the entire crash log to solve the problem he created. He wanted it to expose people using the fork of TNP. Or at least that was his grand scheme. So what exactly had PMD done? What did this malicious code do? PMD had written code that would intentionally brick the user's save file if it detected the user had the TNP fork installed. However, reports say this wouldn't immediately trigger, and there were variations between mods making it harder to detect. The detection process would be made significantly easier though, as PMD would begin to publicly brag about the save-breaking code. On the official forum? Oh, no. That nonsense wouldn't be tolerated. He'd do this on the USC. In fact, he'd do this for quite some time without any consequences, even clarifying that it'd break your save. As the first step of his master plan, PMD injected this save-breaking code into his own mods. Realizing, however, that his mods weren't widely used, he'd also inject this malicious code into several of the mods he was maintaining for Tartiflet. Oh my God. Hard to believe, but the apex of his master plan was even more devious. It combined the malicious code with the zealous moderation of the USC. Some seriously evil fusion energy. Because the USC would instantly ban anyone that was caught using the TNP fork. There was actually a case where a moderator dug through hundreds of lines of a crash log, found a small piece referencing the TNP fork, and then banned the user who posted the crash log. Just think about this absolutely fucked situation for a moment. You have Starsector players actively getting their saves bricked by malicious code, and if they report said code to try and help the player base, they could be banned from the USC. I can't think of a more toxic environment than players being discouraged from reporting malware that is ruining their games. And PMD was loving it. In his own words, he found it hilarious. Absolutely diabolical. There was, however, a fatal flaw to this plan. Allegedly, since the fork used TNP as a base, the code would still trigger if you had the original Take No Prisoners mod installed, meaning that there was far more damage being done than previously thought. And the really sad part about this is, it's unknown just how many players were affected in total. Thankfully, the presence of this code was being made known, and awareness was reaching the player base, which inspired heroes within the Starsector community to spring into action, vigorously combing through the code in PMD's mods. And what they found was save-breaking code in Exotica Technologies, officially linking President Matt Damon to his malicious code. On March 7th, several users would take to the official forum, warning the community and calling out PMD's behavior. Having been officially confirmed, the USC would finally issue a temporary ban to PMD. Without his primary platform to gloat on, PMD would take to the official forum. On the Diablo Avionics mod page, he would reiterate that he intentionally added the code and that he found the situation hilarious. serious. When asked if he was serious, his response was that, yeah, it was really funny. And so reports would make their way to the developers the evening of March 7th. Let's take a break though. I want you all to imagine what it's like to be the developers of Starsector at this time. It's Thursday night. You just got done working on a piece of the 0.98 update, all cozy and ready for bed. However, there appears to be quite a few more notifications in your mailbox than usual. As you open them, you read reports stating that a modder has inserted malware into their mod, a mod they're distributing through your website. In fact, it's not just one, it's multiple. They've even injected the code into other people's mods. You, as the developer of Starsector, now realize that your night will be spent sifting through the code of these mods to confirm these reports. March 8th, Friday morning, Judgment Day. President Matt Damon would officially be banned from the forum for distributing mods with malicious code. While the Starsector community could breathe a sigh of relief, it was a somber moment. For safety reasons, many Starsector mods would need their download links removed from the forum. PMD's mods Exotica Technologies, Combat Activators, and of course, Take No Prisoners, although that had already been taken down. In addition, several Tarts mods that PMD was maintaining would need their download links removed as well. Those include Seeker, Unidentified Contact, Psy Nation, Diablo Avionics, and Unknown Skies, making this event the greatest mod takedown in Starsector's history. Luckily, the official forum is a place of reason, and while each of these threads is now locked, they remain in place to raise awareness and serve as historical lessons for the community. To coincide with PMD's official ban, new rules would be put in place under the title Good Citizen Mod Behavior. Thanks to the awesome Starsector devs, this rule officially establishes that malicious code will not be tolerated, whether it crashes the game, renders it unplayable, or intentionally degrades the player experience due to the presence of other mods. That last part is especially important as, again, I think intentions are very important when it comes to these kind of things, because any modder who is intentionally trying to harm the player experience, in the nicest way I can possibly say this, should find a new hobby, because malware is bad, okay? It should go without saying that malicious code is not welcome in any sensible gaming community. The players of Starsector certainly don't want it. I should know. I'm one of them. But what if I told you there were people who supported this malware? People who believe that bricking people's saves was the right thing to do. People who think malicious code is justified. As much as we might not want to believe such a thing is possible, the truth is quite shocking. And this, my friends, is where things get even more ridiculous. The official ban of PMD and his malware was now public knowledge. Surprisingly, however, not everyone wanted it to be public knowledge. Reddit moderator Power Chicken would lock the original post that was trying to raise awareness about malware being present in Diablo Avionics. It'd then go on to defend the malicious code, stating that if you don't have the banned mod installed, the malware is harmless, and the mod will function like it always has. This was quite a surprising statement coming from a moderator, as it gives the impression that the user is at fault depending on the mods they have installed. Imagine this another way. There's a neighborhood of families, all living peacefully and going about life. Suddenly, a serial killer emerges within the neighborhood. He begins to kill the families inside any house that is painted green. When other families within the neighborhood begin to hear screams, that's when the police officer emerges. Now, you would expect this police officer to say something like, "Holy shit, there's a serial killer. I should do something about this." But instead, he tells the community, "Don't worry, citizens, the neighborhood is safe. As long as you didn't paint your house green, this man is harmless." Power Chicken would also go on to write, "If you want to read deeper into it, I can't stop you." Well, people read him like a book. As it turns out, Power Chicken was in contact with PMD on the USC and actively encouraged the safe-breaking code. He too thought it was funny. When various USC members began to voice their support of the malware, Power Chicken was there to salute them. This behavior would be called out by the community, sparking more outrage towards moderation. There was, however, a glimmer of hope amongst the chaos. Grievous69, a more prominent moderator on the Starsector Reddit page, would attempt to quell the rabble by attempting to do something crazy. Being a reasonable person, the hero we needed, he'd make a post on the Starsector Reddit titled, "Quick PSA about the modding drama and not safe for work mods." To summarize, this PSA stated that people are welcome to talk about the modding drama and not safe for work mods in a civil manner, as Reddit is supposed to be a place of reasonable discussion, with the obvious condition that everyone should still be respectful towards other users. And in reading through the comments, you can clearly see that the community appreciated this approach, as they just wanted to know the whole story and understand the reasoning behind the malware. Well, it wouldn't last long, and Grievous would be made to take down the post. Power Chicken was back. And a new blanket ban would be put in place, and while I can actually understand pieces of the message, the overall tone is quite hostile. Power Chicken would write, and I quote, "We are explicitly, unequivocally, making this rule change without regard for how the subscribers of this subreddit feel about it." Well, as you might imagine, that didn't go over well, and Chicken was back on the menu. From the comments, you can easily tell that people were not happy, and had plenty of evidence to back up their claims. Speaking of having plenty of evidence, what would the USC do about PMD? They had proof of malware in Diablo Avionics, they had proof of malware in Exotica Technologies, they even had PMD bragging about the malware and clarifying exactly how it worked on their Discord. Despite all this, they still hesitated to make his ban permanent, but why? To answer that question, we need to scroll all the way down and unbury this post. They needed time to verify accusations and reach out to affected parties. Bruh. It's as if this issue is presented like a cake, well decorated and pleasing to the eye. Beneath the surface of deceptive frosting, however, the cake is in fact a lie. But the best part is that this cake has layers. Juicy, succulent, delicious layers. And while my response may seem straightforward, there's an even deeper layer to this cake. So, the USC would eventually ban PMD after the official forum ban went into effect. That's right, somehow the developers of the game beat them to it. In fact, I think the Starsector Reddit might have beat them. Their reluctance to do so was staggering. Was it because they were working directly with PMD? That would be a scary thought. In the meantime, however, the internet was doing what the internet does best.
Memes.
Because no matter how hard some of these communities would try to shut down conversation, the memes must flow, and flow they did. At this point, I had tried everything I could to be reasonable, so all that was left was to sit back and laugh. When PMD was officially banned, I had a lull, a lamau, if you will, because, well, that's hilarious, and deserved. Obviously.
How quickly the tide turns.
However, not everyone thought the memes were funny. Not only were several of them getting deleted off the Reddit page, but some users would actually take up defense of PMD's actions. Bold move, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off. Now, I'm surprised anyone would defend malware and modding. Some people even went so far to say modding your game at all makes you an entitled piece of shit. Luckily, the greater Starsector community isn't so feeble-minded. However, that wouldn't stop people from spreading rumors or just outright lying. One user even going so far as to claim that nobody has ever been instantly banned from the USC, and when speaking about my ban that allegedly I was warned beforehand. In fact, this was a common theme, as apparently that's what USC moderators had been telling the Starsector community. Speaking of which, what was happening on the USC? Besides moderators downplaying the situation and telling people there's no malware, would see other members of the community trying to discredit me and claiming that I was lying. Well, the interesting part about my comment that is screen capped here is that it is entirely accurate, all the way down to having to fill out the suggestion form to get a response from moderation. And then you even have people saying things like,
"This guy is friends with UAF devs, so that's hardly a surprise."
yeah, I am friends with UAF devs. And besides having a strange attraction to robo-girls, they're great people who make really fun mods, but this is just getting embarrassing, guys. But wait, there's more. They'd go on to defend PMD's actions by stating, "It's like going and burning down house of people who did bad harm to people you love. Bad thing, arsonist will go to jail, but you can understand where it comes from. The Luddic path are starting to look like the moderates."
For the cause!
They actually gave this individual, I suppose on behalf of their dedication to the cause, moderator status. That's right, Mr. Burn Your House Down has now joined the ranks of USC moderation. When people started voicing their understandable concerns, that's when the defense force would arrive to shut it down. Although my favorite response would come from the line defending PMD. He was a villain for like 2 days, but people make it sound like he eat puppies and never made anything good. To which reader would reply, well, he sure ate saves. I just find that funny. On a more serious note though, this is getting a little crazy. What's next? Crash code? Nuzzle wuzzles you. Did someone say?
Crash code?
Okay, hold up. Before we go any further, what is crash code? Crash code is a type of malicious code. Malicious code is an umbrella term used to describe code that is designed to cause harm, and in this case, ruin the player experience. Malware, for example, is malicious code designed to access, corrupt, delete, or otherwise tamper with files on the user's computer. It's illegal to distribute in almost every jurisdiction around the world, and can be tried as a criminal offense. So, if there is code that corrupts your save file, well, guess what? Your Starsector game files are files on your computer, so yes, it's malware. Now, it's an extremely petty form of malware, and some people don't think it be like it is, but it do. Crash code, on the other hand, differs from malware, as crash code does not directly destroy files. Crash code prevents the normal operation of a program by deliberately causing it crash when certain conditions are met. In game terms, it means it'll crash your game if you find the trigger. While not as illegal as malware, it's still a very hostile form of malicious code. And on the lower end, we have artificial incompatibilities. This kind of code can lock certain features out of mods. So for example, a faction mod could have code that causes another faction to just not show up in world generation. It won't brick your save, it won't crash the game, but it will cause problems. This of course is not an exhaustive list, as there's many forms of malicious code, all of which are covered under the Good Citizen Rule. And the Good Citizen Rule is exactly what the Starsector community needed, as in the process of cleaning up the forum, it was brought to the developers' attention that there were other modders who weren't being the best citizens. Enter Dragon, or IRCS on the USC. Among other mods, Dragon is the author of High-Tech Expansion and Apex Design Collective, both of which would crash your game if used alongside another mod, New Galactic Order. The reason being, from what I understand, is for not approving of the faction's political ideology. And there is no shortage of strong opinions, as Dragon or IRCS openly supported the usage of malicious code, stating that Matt did the right thing and stood up for what he believed in, which is an opinion someone could have. When the developers of Starsector asked Dragon to remove the crash code from their mods, the response was no. Inspired by Matt's actions, Dragon instead decided they'd rather have the mods removed from the official forum than remove the crash code. And so both High-Tech Expansion and Apex Design Collective would be taken completely off the forum. I'm running out of clown makeup. The Starsector community was officially consumed by chaos. As confusion and paranoia had set in, the dominoes were falling, and there seemed to be no end to the escalation. In addition, the events had started to gain attention from outside the Starsector community, with channels such as Necro News covering the controversy.
That's it? Following the release of this video, he was then banned from the unofficial Starsector Discord.
The memes would become legendary, with YouTubers of mythical status such as Yimfa helping out the community by identifying the exact malicious code used. You may recognize this Slavic wizard as he makes videos on Dark Souls, Elden Ring, Skyrim, and being a man of culture, also dabbles in Starsector. With these events now getting brought into public view, it was at this time that the USC realized they needed to shut it down and initiate full damage control. The USC would add new rules, and then, in an attempt to cover up what they had done, change my ban to fit their new rules. Now, would they make an announcement about changing my ban? Of course not. They did this silently, and hoped nobody would notice. As for the malicious code, the USC would follow behind the official forum and copy the Good Citizen Rule. But it's the start of this announcement that I actually find quite funny, stating, "Would like to openly address these matters for the sake of transparency. Please refer to the following following summaries for context, to which it links PMD's malware and IRC's crash code. Interesting that they'd conveniently leave out the part where their own wild accusations and bannings are what caused this whole mess to begin with, but it's pretty clear that USC moderators and I share different opinions, like the definition of transparency. As meanwhile, discussion on the USC became censored to the point that users felt afraid to explain what was happening. Even Winnie the Pooh is starting to get jealous. With the truth obscured, moderators have since injected their own. Besides telling people that I was warned and I allegedly refused, they are now saying they didn't unban me because I was thoroughly unpleasant, along with plenty of other things that never happened. Now, I'm not sure why they do this, I guess in an attempt to make themselves seem more reasonable. It's disappointing to see this kind of thing. Just not very cash money in my opinion. And the scary part is we don't know how deep it goes, as so many of the posts have since been deleted. But one thing remains certain. It really didn't have to be this way. And when I say that, I mean I've posted all of my Starsector videos and mod reviews to the official forum without any drama. I have since realized, however, that hating me and my channel is part of joining the USC upper ranks, even going so far as telling people not to trust my Java 8 guide video. Why? I have no idea. But regardless, they hate it because I made it. Oh, the misery. And misery is exactly what the greater Starsector community was feeling. Malware was a reality, mods were being taken off the forum, and the player base was angry. As it turns out, players don't like malicious code on their computer, or moderators trying to cover up the situation. On behalf of the Starsector player base, I'd like to ask malware sympathizers, don't you feel silly? Don't you feel stupid? Don't you feel a little ashamed? It's probably hard to feel those things within the padded walls of the USC. So let's make something clear. This is crazy, insane, absolute bonkers territory. I'd go so far as to say, that's nuts. And what pairs well with nuts? A beverage. On that note, allow me to welcome a special guest to the channel, Starsector modder, content creator, and a great person all around. Welcome to the channel, Whiskey. Introduce yourself and what you do.
Hello, I'm Whiskey, and first and foremost, I am a content creator that focuses on military themes, strategy, and sci-fi. I stream, I VTube, and presently I'm reviving the remnants of my YouTube channel.
How long have you been a part of the community, and what brought you to this sector?
I arrived in the sector quite long ago, but I only became active in March 2023 when I started with streaming Starsector. Since that, I started working on a Starsector mod based on my sci-fi setting, the Sun Batavia Republic. Your videos are actually part of the reason why I began modding. My community originally recommended me your UAF video when I began streaming Starsector in 2023. You did a really good job of highlighting the limitless creativity and potential the modding community in Starsector has, and through that I kind of decided to work on mods myself.
Well, thank you, I appreciate that. They certainly take longer to make than I would like.
Yeah.
What would you say your experience has been like interacting with the Starsector community?
I think that kind of depends on the part of the Starsector community, because it's not exactly unified, and there are some parts which I really like and I keep returning to them, and there are some a bit shadier parts. I like the creativity and the amount of cooperation the community has, but, well, like many game communities, there are certain cliques that formed over time. I did make a lot of friends in the sector, some of which I presently work with on my mod, and those are all wonderful people. Gravind, Zur, and Haplo, Kesar, and Touch of Vanilla.
When it comes to Starsector as a game, do you think it's meant for mature audiences?
Absolutely. Personally, I think that it's a very dark setting. It's post-collapse society. The main quote-unquote law and order faction is the military, which just took over. So I would say, yeah, it's very dark setting, very grim setting, and it is kind of formed in a way which lends itself to very dark topics about societal collapse.
Did you notice anything offensive in my Iron Shell review? I'm sure you know the part to which I'm referring.
Yep. I saw this question coming. I don't think that what you mentioned in the first video was in any way offensive, and the way you mentioned the problematic part of Starsector modding scene was quite tasteful. I find the way you handle it, the way you handle the sensitive topic, quite alright, and it's not anything that would be worth the trouble that was pushed on you afterwards.
Speaking of that, do you think the USC handled the situation appropriately?
This is definitely the harder question, but in general, I think they could have handled it much better. It doesn't quite feel like the internal communication of the unofficial Starsector Discord team was handled well, and that led to some decisions I do not approve of at all. It felt to me that agenda of individual members of the team was pushed forwards and affected the community's response.
So you got to witness, I'm sure, some of the drama of 2024. What was your perspective on the events like the malware, crash code, rule changes, and bans?
Well, the first reaction was, holy shit, that's crazy, man. There are definitely topics I know more about, so I will cover those last. I'll start with the malware, which I consider absolutely abhorrent, including the crash code. I think that modders should never, ever push their personal agenda, no matter if it's political or otherwise, and no matter how much they believe it, on other people using their mod. Letting your displeasure be known is perfectly fine, that is your right of free speech, but using malware or crash code is just absolutely disgusting. As for censorship, I don't think that censorship is good in any way or form. People will always say things that I disagree or hate, and similarly I will say things that they disagree with. I don't limit what they do, and I expect the same treatment. As for the reaction, seeing it was official correspondence with the USC team, I'm comfortable talking about it. I messaged them in regards to your ban, and noted to them that I heavily disagree with their decision to ban you, and told them that I think that it goes against their own ban and rule policies, which is a decision that I still stand behind. I think they changed those policies since, which kind of feels worse, but as I said before, the ban was surprisingly swift, and that's kind of weird. With this kind of reasoning, they could practically ban anyone for anything, which is what kind of makes me uncomfortable. And more importantly, they mentioned to me that they were unsuccessful in reaching a compromise with you. But yeah, after that I pretty much just tried to explain to them my point of view, and I got another response that was pretty much mild appreciation for my concern, and they will do exactly nothing about it.
Alright, to end on a positive note, you mentioned earlier that you were working on a faction mod, the San Batavia Republic. Could you tell us a bit more about the mod and how you got started?
Absolutely. I started working on my mod in 2023, and it basically started as a way to create my own flagship, and it grew from there. I first created the flagship, then I decided I need an escort for the flagship, then I created a star system, then I just started kind of creating my own faction. And at that point I kind of decided, what the hell, might as well make a proper mod. And that's how I kind of started with the SBR modding team. We grew since, and I'd say that now the mod is actually playable.
Oh, that's super exciting.
Yeah.
As we wrap up here, is there anything else you wanted to add?
Well, the only thing which I would add at the end is a lot of success with your videos. I'm looking forward to the next one. Glad to see you back.
Thank you. You're very kind, Whiskey.
No problem.
One of these days I'll actually finish the video.
Yeah, I know that feeling with my own mod.
It's been an absolute pleasure interviewing you and having you on the channel. Thanks so much, Whiskey.
Hey, you're absolutely welcome. I'm glad to help.
That was Whiskey Project, and while a relatively new Starsector modder, she is an active content creator, and you can find her links in the description. While providing some very reasonable takes, Whiskey also brought up a good point, the fact that there may have been some communication issues. And I get it, people make mistakes. It's okay to be wrong about something. Hell, I've been wrong plenty of times before, even in my own videos. In the Iron Shell video, I was wrong about the NFT merchant militia fleet. It was an Iron Shell fleet in the Iron Shell star system Naraka, and so I assumed it was from the Iron Shell mod. I found out later that the NFT fleet is actually from Pagzim, or in my Scalartech review, I pronounced Scalartech as Scholartech for a majority of the video. Neatal has since let me know that my pronunciation is terrible, to which they are not wrong. I, however, am an American, so haha, not my problem. That's all to say that mistakes I can forgive, but there's a big difference between making mistakes and trying to cover them up. And if you know my older videos like from Conqueror's Blade, you should know that I really don't like it when people lie. And so, how would you like to know what really happened? How would you like to know the truth? I think it's time For you see, while I've told the story thus far in mostly chronological order, I might have left out a few details, like the actual messages I received from USC Moderation. I have had to redact certain words and phrases to allow this on YouTube, which I hope you can understand, as I'm 10 billion% sure it's not what you're expecting. So get excited, as this is the official ban message I received from the USC. I've highlighted key sections which I think you will find interesting, for within this message you will find an abundance of accusations and exaggerations, but a peculiar lack of negotiations. And this is the filtered version. The original was even more dubious. I realize now that I should have saved the originals when I had the chance, but I didn't think at the time that the USC would later change their official messages. Now, I think it's insane to accuse someone of such things when their only intention was to tell a joke. Also quite ironic to receive such a message from someone who calls others weak-boned snowflakes hidden in the options of their own mod. But wait, there's more. They'd later go on to make even bolder accusations, which was one of the pieces I remember quite clearly before it was edited out. Reminder that these are the official messages of USC Moderation, so I can only assume they were approved of by the entire team. But the craziest part about this is that the sensible, reasonable solution would have been incredibly easy. And I'm not talking about getting CJ to follow a train. All they had to do was talk to me like a normal person. Like a, yo dog, we think a joke in one of your videos is inappropriate for our Discord, so we removed it. If you could not post that one here, that'd be great. And I'd say, gotcha, thanks for letting me know, Pumpkin. It would have been that easy. And when I say easy, I mean that despite my seemingly imposing presence, I was very willing to talk to anyone. And when I say anyone, I mean everyone. We all remember this fellow, right? Well, I actually did have a brief conversation with him. He was the only person who even sort of asked me to change my video. So when USC moderators have said that we asked Ironclad, I think they might be referring to President Matt Damon, which would be extremely concerning, as that mean USC moderators were working directly with, everything is starting to make a lot more sense now. Anyways, he never got back to me. Must have gotten busy with other projects. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. They had good intentions. I guess I just don't think good intentions look like this.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Stall.
Let's take a trip with Littlefoot to a land before time, before the chaos, before things became the way they are. In this land, we can find relics, as the memories of days long past wash over us. Relics like this one, which has now become one of my last posts in the USC. Hilarious and oddly poetic. Some have hoped the truth would be buried beneath the smoldering rubble of family homes, who allegedly did bad harm. Others have hoped the waters of time would wash away any trace of what happened. But power is interesting. It makes people do crazy things if they think they can get away with it. So hypothetically, if a certain unofficial Discord wanted to completely remove me from the Starsector community, what would they do? They wouldn't try to take things outside the Discord, would they? Because they'd have to contact the developers of Starsector, send them my video, accuse me of all kinds of things, and claim that I was a threat to the community. Now imagine my surprise when I was messaged by the Starsector devs to find out all of that actually happened. So what happened after that? We all sat down, the developers and I, and had a talk about it. The funny part is that it was the most pleasant conversation I had during this time. I had a pretty good idea before, and now I can say with confidence that the Starsector devs are intelligent and reasonable people, which makes sense as they're making Starsector one of the best space games on the planet. While I won't show those messages out of respect to the developers, sometimes it's actions that speak louder than words. And when it came time to release the Iron Shell Wholesome Edition, let's just say that I really appreciated the gesture. I'd describe Alex, the lead developer of Starsector, as a beacon of light for when the community finds itself in the depths of the abyss. It's he who guides us towards salvation. Now, there are many lessons to be learned from the events of 2024, and something I've learned from my time in the Starsector modding community. community is, we can't make Alex do all the work. And when it came time to release the Iron Shell Wholesome Edition, let's just say that I really appreciated the gesture. I'd describe Alex, the lead developer of Starsector, as a beacon of light for when the community finds itself in the depths of the abyss. It's he who guides us towards salvation. Now, there are many lessons to be learned from the events of 2024, and something I've learned from my time in the Starsector modding community is, we can't make Alex do all the work. You could say the events of 2024 are the worst thing to happen in the Starsector community, which I'm not going to argue against, but I'd also argue that it's the best thing to have happened, as it's the best learning experience the community has ever gotten. Now we could sit here while I unleash hours of my unfiltered opinions, but I'm just one person. Why don't we learn from other more established game communities? Starting with one of the smaller yet still relevant concerns is the issue of self-inserts. Now I personally do not recommend self-inserts in any form of public media, as I've only witnessed it cause problems. What people do in their single-player games is up to them, and yet it's important to differentiate fiction from reality, or the mental consequences will never be the same. A great example, a man put his fictional self and wife onto a RimWorld colony. Needless to say, he ended up traumatizing himself due to what his fictional inserts experienced. Not only do I think this makes a funny story, it also makes for a great lesson. As for our second academic experience in the world of modding, we have another story. Now this section of the video is going to get a little saucy, but if you've already made it this far, you have a level of commitment that exceeds that of my exes. As many of you know, after the events of 2024, I took a rather long break from Starsector. During that break, I played many games. Games like Skyrim,
Last mistake.
Fallout 4,
Maybe we should talk about this.
The Binding of Isaac, Darkest Dungeon, Helldivers 2, Marvel Rivals, MechWarrior 5, Mercenaries, Monster Hunter World, Zenless Zone Zero, Noita,
I am supreme!
Total War, Warhammer 3, and of course, RimWorld. While not an exhaustive list of what I played, all of those games have something in common. They all have substantial modding communities, and all of them have not safe for work mods. Now, are those game communities imploding due to drama? No. In fact, they're thriving. Skyrim, Fallout 4, and RimWorld being some of the most modded games on the planet. Have those communities dealt with malware and modding before? Absolutely, and it's something we can learn a lot from. In fact, RimWorld went through a very similar scenario around 2020, in which the modder of the Lost Forest mod really didn't like a certain forbidden RimWorld mod. Apparently, if certain actions were taken while using Lost Forest and said mod simultaneously, Lost Forest would corrupt the player's save file, which in RimWorld terms could mean many hours of gameplay being destroyed. Does this sound familiar? One of the key differences in this scenario being how the situation was handled. RimWorld is on Steam, meaning that both players and modders must agree to their terms of service, which surprisingly include not putting malware in mods. So not only would that forest make like a tree, never to be found on the Steam Workshop again, but the author, as far as I'm aware, had their Steam account fully banned. The response from the RimWorld community was also quite straightforward. They said good riddance and made another human leather hat. Besides the very obvious lesson of malware's bad, okay, is that these sort of mods exist. By the very nature of modding, people can make whatever they want, which means some people make some pretty weird stuff. For some, this might be quite the revelation, like when your dad walks in and sees you playing Overwatch. Instead of asking,
Are you winning, son?
he says,
Wait a second here. Mercy is from a video game?
Now, I assume a good portion of the Starsector community is mature enough to understand this, considering that a good portion of Starsector players arrived in the sector due to a certain review. And on that note, let's welcome an extra special guest to the channel. Hey people, Seth here. Just kidding. This is a cardboard cutout. Someday, we'll catch him and force him to do an interview. In the meantime, just as he reviews minigames that I have no intention of playing, my ears still haven't recovered from that one, I don't expect people to like all the mods I review. And one of the brilliant, universal facts of modding is that you don't have to download any mods you don't like. Which brings us to the most crucial lesson. The lesson that's so important, it applies far beyond Starsector. In fact, it's the entire reason I'm making this video. So strap yourself in. People are allowed to play their single-player games however they want. One of the reasons I'll boot up a single-player game is because I don't want to deal with other people. I have even gone so far as to mod a multiplayer game into a single-player game, which in the case of Tarkov is the objectively correct way to play. Now, the fact that there are not only people out there who wish to control how others enjoy their single-player games, but also are willing to implement malicious code to destroy the single-player experience is not something I can ignore. It goes against the very ethos of modding. It betrays the trust of both players and other modders. It tarnishes the reputation of whatever game community it's attached to. The fact that the developers have had to deal with this garbage The fact that it was even brought into the Starsector community.
It's fucking embarrassing!
I'm tired, and it's the kind of tired sleep won't fix. I'm tired of malicious code. I'm tired of malware in mods. I'm tired of people being afraid to mod Starsector. I'm tired of the player base getting lied to and manipulated. And I'm especially tired of those that enable this kind of behavior while masquerading as moral prophets. Despite how tired I might be, I love the Starsector community, because the greater Starsector community are a bunch of cool people who love playing and modding their spaceship game. It's people having unique experiences with games that makes them a special form of media. So instead of putting so much energy into hating how other people play, why don't we try coming together and sharing our fun experiences instead? As an example, even in vanilla Starsector, I've never been much into trading and hauling cargo. I enjoy exploration, combat, and tinkering with refits. And yet when I see other people getting super involved in Starsector trading, it makes me really happy. Analyzing supply and demand, discovering trade routes, dodging taxes, and living their best space trucker lives. And just because it's not a playstyle I enjoy doesn't mean it's bad. In fact, I think it's awesome that someone can enjoy the game in a way that I don't. If anything, I think it speaks to how great of a game Starsector is, that there's so many different possible playstyles contained within one game. Freedom of player choice being essential, and it's that freedom that needs to be protected. Even with the incredible autonomy granted by a game like RimWorld, their community has done an excellent job harmonizing different people. With proper filters and reasonable moderation, even a community with over 500,000 members can enjoy their war crime simulator together. And they're quite proud of their identity as a war crime simulator. A common saying and useful game tip in the RimWorld community is that if your prisoners keep trying to run, it's your fault for letting them have legs. I sincerely hope the Starsector community can reach such levels of fun. With that in mind, where do we go from here? As an absolute legend once said,
The way is lit. The path is clear. We require only the strength to follow it.
The future of Starsector is bright. I'm very confident in that, because I've seen it myself. Like, bruh, I'm playing Starsector too. But before I can talk about that, we have to understand what happened after the events of 2024. What happened since? Where are we now? Good news, everyone! Many improvements have been made throughout the community. High-Tech Expansion and Apex Design Collective have both returned to the forum, now without crash code, which is excellent to see. As for PMD's mods, Take No Prisoners has been taken over by the Java man Wisborn, who has offered to maintain compatibility for future Starsector updates. In a similar fashion, modder powered by alcohol, Kesar has taken up custodianship of Exotica Technologies. The code within both of these mods has been thoroughly cleansed, making them usable again with peace of mind. But what happened to the amazing works of Tartiflet? Outer Rim Alliance, Torch Ships and Deadly Armaments, as well as Seeker Unidentified Contact are now all being maintained by the updater of mods, Seeker of Archives, MN Hebi. For those interested in acquiring these mods, MN Hebi is using the original Tartiflet mod threads, and the updated download links can be found in the later pages of comments. I understand that this might be a little confusing, but they are there, I promise. Sign Nation, from what I can tell, is being updated in a similar fashion by Star. As for the last two, beloved mods, they have received special treatment. Unknown Skies development has been adopted by James Triple Q and has received a fresh forum post, with several updates to the mod already released. The future is bright for Unknown Skies. And of course, the big one, Diablo Avionics. Recompiled and now actively updated by Cayman Joestar. The torch has been passed, and from what I've seen, I'm impressed. Not only has the mod received several updates, but for the first time in many years, Diablo Avionics has received new ships. These spacefaring speedwagons are an absolute blast to fly. In fact, it's the most fun I've had with the mod since 2017. All footage of Diablo Avionics used in this video is from the Joestar edition, which I highly recommend. And really, I'd like to thank all of these people people for maintaining these mods and actively working to improve the Starsector modding scene. This progress is especially important as we move ever closer to the game's release. Looking towards the future, if Starsector is to be released on Steam, not only will a healthy community be important, but the modding scene will certainly change as well. It could be like Skyrim and Fallout, where many modders make Nexus their base camp. Alternatively, it could utilize the Steam Workshop like RimWorld has done very successfully, which I think would be the best option for Starsector. Or it could be an unholy combination of both, which is the case with MechWarrior 5. Half the mods are on Steam, the other half on Nexus. If you plan on combining both like I did, you'll need a third-party mod manager to sort everything and make the game actually function. I bring this up because while I love the official Starsector forum, the current system puts a lot of pressure on the developers to manage the mod community. That, and I don't know how much more the mod index can take before, well, it starts getting ridiculous. So we should try to make the devs' lives as easy as possible, because the devs don't want drama, which is understandable. I don't particularly enjoy drama either. I try to keep things pretty positive. So, how do I put this? Please don't give me the content to make another one of these videos. I really don't want to.
I'd rather put the glad in gladiator. So say it with me. Are you not entertained?
Maybe you are a vanilla Chad, and modding drama doesn't apply to you. If, however, you have entered the mysterious abyss of Starsector modding, of which you know you will never return, allow me to light the way. For now, I recommend getting all your Starsector mods from the official forum. In the rare case there is a mod I recommend that's not on the forum, like Super Weapons Arsenal, I'll make that very clear, as I've always done. Otherwise, there are tons of new mods being worked on that I do recommend. Knights of Blood, random assortment of things, Ashes of the Domain, and more. So I'm going to continue working on mod reviews and playing modded games. In the meantime, let's take the lessons we've learned and together make Starsector modding the best it can be. Huge thanks to my supporters and especially my patrons. I lost several months of development time thanks to the most adorable surprise halfway through production. So I appreciate the patience, the love, and subscribe if you like puppies. I'm IroncladLion, and thanks for watching.